Hi everyone, Brian Walker, CEO, founder of Retail Doctor Group. Thanks for joining us on May 2026, where we do our Future of Retail podcast. And I'm delighted because in May 2022, you might recall, I had the great pleasure of interviewing and talking with a gentleman named Howard Saunders, a friend, a colleague, and a remarkable retail futurist. And I thought on the anniversary we'd come back together. And in May 22, I can remember sitting here in Sydney and Howard was in London, and we talked about the levers of retail. And I have to say, if you go back to that period and you re-listen to that podcast, there is so much accuracy in those predictions. So without further
I should
ado,
hope so. I
welcome
should hope
Howard.
so.
As we start to sort of really think about the future of retail, its relationship to the future of obviously consumerism, population, demographics, and we can't walk away from technology. And if you're a CEO or a retail board member listening to this podcast and listening to the strain and thinking around the future, there's some fascinating themes. And one of them, of course, dare I say it, is the growth of AI. But I really want to zero in on what that means. And you talk about the jobs apocalypse.
I don't know if you've sort of, because everyone's debating this, everyone's debating it, and I have a slightly tempered view of it, which is I see it as a sort of seesaw of change rather than this apocalypse. Apocalypse is, it's a nice word to grab headlines, but I think the truth will be a little bit more gradual. But what we're seeing, so my analogy is water. I've got a glass of water here. Knowledge will be like water. Knowledge is free. Ask AI anything. I know it can be wrong some of the times, it often is, and it exaggerates, but knowledge on the whole is free. So if I say, like, how much is water, Brian? You say, well, it's free, isn't it? Well, it's not quite free, is it? Because if it's just straight out the tap, it's pretty much free. If, however, I chill it in a bottle and brand it, then, you can charge £1 for it. And if I take you to, if you're in a concert or whatever, in an event, and I can probably charge you £3 or £4. Sorry to use quid, but that's that's my lead.
That's okay.
So it's not really free. It's how you package it, and that's what's going to happen to knowledge and information. It's on the whole free, and then when you want it packaged and branded and reassured and reprocessed, then you'll pay a little bit for it. So what you're going to see is the lawyers take a big hit because we can ask all that upfront research stuff and finish the job off with the human touch and the human reassurance and the human negotiation. And you're going to see that just tipping. So knowledge becomes free. What happens to the economy? I mean, it's kind of incredible. So all the people, crudely, all the people we see as those experts, they're going to become poorer. And you look around you, we'll get onto demographics later, I think, but you look around you, when you go to a nice smart restaurant, if you know the people, you'll notice it's builders and scaffolders and plumbers that are in there now. Those things, it's changed. It's tipping, so that the muscular economy is taking over from the knowledge economy, and it's slowly tipping that balance. So we're going to see, a decline of the lanyard class, as they call it, the admin, clerical, legal research, big contracts, and all that stuff.
Yeah, these are all roles that have always been data-dependent roles, essentially.
Yes.
And what's interesting here, I think, is that whilst AI, Howard, may not yet be causing mass unemployment, it's already shaping tasks or reshaping tasks, and you've given those examples. As it does that, it must by definition reshape productivity, tax bases, wage confidence, So what about, is the deeper issue ultimately that it's not only about jobs lost, it's what's going to happen to consumer demand when work, income, and identity are destabilized?
Yes, you get this seesaw tips, and it changes the profile of the economy and the consumer class. But the biggest thing I know we are desperate to talk about demographics, and I don't want to get into it now, but that's the biggest thing that's going to change the customer profile. But let me just do a bit of good news. I do all these silly analogies. 100 years ago, I asked my grandfather actually. Come and get my grandfather, land him in the pub after a busy working week, and he's listening on what people are doing, what their jobs are, and he wouldn't understand any of them. Okay, none of them, not one would make sense to him really. In the centre of London, where there's all people in PR and promotion, he wouldn't understand any of it. But it's the same for me. If I haven't said this before, by the way, because it's the same for me. If I go back to the local pub that right outside the agency I worked at in the 80s, and I listen to what they're saying, I don't really know what they're doing either. So the jobs formulate around the economy. So you can't just look through a toilet roll,
That's right.
Think, what's happening to this job? Well, if you do, this job will evaporate, but it's what accumulates in other areas. So I'm pretty positive on much of that. But the tipping point is this shift from the knowledge economy to the muscular economy, and that's undisputable, I think.
And that's a really nice terminology around moving from the knowledge economy to the muscular economy. As retailers think about distribution modeling, segments, audiences, a range of topping, pricing, and so forth, all comes ultimately from demand. And what does demand start to look like? In Australia, by 2028, 1 in 4 Australians will be over 65. And you talked nicely, Howard, about the demographic time bomb. We face the same aging, low fertility, dependency ratio pressure as Europe, fewer workers, to our earlier point, more retirees, rising healthcare costs, of course, labour shortage, and pressure on consumption growth again. Well, it's obviously a retail and economic problem looming. What are your thoughts on the demographic time bomb?
And so I was looking at this in terms of Europe and the US, which are always the sort of benchmarks. And then because I knew we were going to have a chat, I had a quick look at what's happening in Australia. It was exactly the same, if not worse. It's a sort of microcosm, actually. But it's back to read the room. And the reason I say restaurants, because restaurants are good because they're barometers of wealth, really, aren't they? That's what you do with your disposable income. So look around the restaurant. When you're next in it, look around. They're all old. They're all old people. I mean, it might be different in certain areas, and I can hear someone screaming, "That's not true. I was at a restaurant like this." Shut up.
Yeah.
On the whole.
That might be true of some of the more older boroughs and cities. London's a standout example. Look, I do take the point. Well, of course, because we're aging at the rate which we've touched on. As you say, read the room.
Yeah.
So yes, I think
you're seeing it. It's not just theory.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point.
But it goes back. It's a very simple. I was listening to a podcast the other night, and something that I hadn't really thought about because I'm not a mathematician. Look, the birth rates, the fertility rates, are in the UK is 1.4. In Australia, it's about the same, 1.4. In the US, it's slightly better, 1.6. But here's the thing that I hadn't thought. So obviously you understand the fertility rate of 2 is a replacement. So fertility rate of 2 is just status quo. If everyone has 2 kids, there is no increase in the population. None.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not good news. 2 isn't good news. 1.4 is disastrous news. So let's just do the maths. If it's 1, if the replacement rate is 1, it halves the population and halves it again, because the next 25 years, the next generation, it's halved again. So I don't know what the reverse of hyperbolic is, that curve that drops off a cliff, a piano falling out. That is where we are. And this is really fundamental stuff. And no one's really, well, are they? Some people are. But what that means is, crudely, looking at Australia specifically, it roughly divides into thirds. You've got a third of people over 60. That means they're going to need healthcare and welfare and pensions and the rest of it. You've got a third of the population, which I say newcomers, people that weren't born in Australia. A third, okay. And then you've got the rest. And the rest, some of them are working, some aren't, have got to pay for everyone else. That's where you go. We're doing exactly the same here. And it's just, crudely, it's not sustainable. You cannot pay for all those pensions at the, and your pension system is actually different to ours. Ours is a policy scheme.
We've got the superannuation plan, and we do have 15% or thereabouts directly self-funded retirees and so forth. So there are those pockets of wealth, but I think the really interesting topic as well, of course, is the birth rate. So here we are building all these retail channels and stores and all this sort of stuff. And I think what you're saying, that in the future, we'll have less, not more, inhabitants on this world to partake.
With immigration is topping up the lack of...
Yes, it is.
But that's a massive shift, and we can talk about that. It's a massive shift.
But that's a relatively short-term shift, isn't it? Because if overall populations, to your map and so forth, are declining, well, the pessimistic view would be we're just shuffling the deck chairs from country to country.
Yeah.
The optimistic view would
after 2050, 2060, some people put it out, the global population starts to follow the same trajectory. So that's long term, which is great for climate change and all the rest of it. So let's, people stay positive. The big thing, because we're here talking about retail, and when I talk to retailers, they're fully prepared for climate change. There's not a retailer out there that hasn't got something in their annual report reacting to climate change. And yet the
sustainability and so forth.
Sustainability and all that, which is yet to happen, I'm afraid, yet to happen. But we're all prepared for it. The demographic shift, no one's mentioning. Look, the two things it does is, one, it reduces your number of customers massively. Because who are customers? They're people in their 20s and 30s and early 40s. People like you and me, Brian. We're not buying fridges and carpets and clothes and shoes and T-shirts and sneakers. We're not buying...
I still buy a few, Howard, but I take the point.
I wasn't including you, sorry. But we're not the big consumers. And
no, it's the millennials, absolutely.
The customers... So this is the bit that no one's talking about. This is the bit that I add on to this process. It's the lack of customers in the equation. And that no one's really thinking about. 2040, in 14 years' time, 37% of your population won't have been born yet there. Mm. So what does that mean? Who is it that writes the comedy, the films? Who is it that, what sort of restaurants do you have? What about your clothing stores? Who are you catering for in that? You've got this boomer generation, which is getting older and sicker, disappearing off.
Yeah.
Australia, the face of Australia changes. It's, I'm not putting judgment on it. It's just changed.
Yeah.
And so the Australia we knew and know and love is gone. It lasted 100 years. That's the truth. The same's happening across Europe. That shift of who we are. Those are the things that people, where's the culture sit in that equation? So,
well, Yes,
Tricky
I'd like to
conversation.
think. Oh, it's fascinating. I'd like to think there'll be an emergence of a particular culture. Um, but I want to take your point about less consumers, less customers. To
Mm.
me, that's the really fascinating piece around. So, what does retail look like if there's less customers? If AI permeates the economy to the level that we think it will? So the knowledge worker is redeployed, one would hope. The muscular economy has more sort of impact into this sector,
Yeah,
but there's just less people because we're having less babies.
that's true. We could turn it around. We just need to have a lot of babies. And there's lots of evidence that you can't turn that around, which is sad, actually. And
Yeah,
that's the cure for this. We're talking across the board here, but what happens as you get the migration into cities? So cities will always, that's where the young people go. So of your third of the work, it's not the workforce,
yeah,
third of the population that can work, some of whom won't because, well, for various reasons, they'll be funding the whole of Australia. They'll migrate to cities. And what happens is the towns then struggle. So, and we're seeing it
yeah.
already in the UK. You go to towns, they're sort of full of old people. I'm in one. I'm in one here. Okay, I'm not in London at the moment. I'm in one. It's full of
Yeah,
old people. You lose the banks. You lose the
yeah,
restaurants. You lose the fire station, the police station, and slowly you get these dying towns. The cities, land in the centre of London that's still thriving. That will be the
thriving and
case.
vibrant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but your towns, your suburban towns, will be where the suffer, where the pain is. Um, And that's where the retail will contract massively. What's the point of having shops on the high street if there's no customers out there? This is 2040. And we've
yeah.
already just said that, last time we spoke, which seems like last Wednesday, was actually 4 years. We're talking
That's right.
14 years, and this is
Mm.
happening. So, what retailers do you know have got a plan of action for redistributing their branches and their outlets and rethinking their demographics and their
And
customer
who their
base?
audiences are and so forth.
Yeah, who is that?
Well,
Who's looking
I
at
think
that?
that's the value proposition for sure. But I also look at a couple of other aspects that you touch on. Uh, and I see here that in the average Australian diet coming now and into the future, about 50% of it's made up of re-engineered, ultra-processed foods. And and I just think to myself, okay, we're aging at a rate of knots. It'll will be dominated by aging population over the next 10 to 15 years.
Absolutely.
Will absolutely have the impact of AI. And then we're going to feed everyone, or 50% of the population, very crudely, ultra processed foods, and then pump them full of medicines to keep them alive a bit longer. So it's all sounding a little bit pessimistic. I need
Well,
some
you're ahead of
cheering
me,
up here to
Brian.
help.
You're ahead of me. There is. Let me do some hope on the horizon. Um, we've got this. Let me do a shout out for this guy that's actually a local guy here. I've never met him, but he's a guy called Rambling Henry, and I don't know why I'm helping promote him. He's on TikTok, and he just sort of says, "For Christ's sake, why are we eating all this crap in the supermarkets, seed oils, E numbers, and all the rest of it?" And he's very good at explaining sort of the mess that we've got ourselves into. Um, but essentially, I don't think it's a wicked plan. I mean, there are some tinfoil hat people out there who sort of think it is. They want to sell you the cure because they make you ill, and then I don't think they're as clever as that. I think for pressure on the supermarkets to cut costs, in a period of less than 20 years, we're suddenly seeing everything has got rapeseed oil in it, and there's loads of evidence to suggest it's inflammatory and all the rest of it. And you're ahead of me on this. So, yeah,
I know
they're
what you mean.
poisoning us. Okay, they're poisoning us. This is the theory. They're poisoning us, and there's no other choice. However, and go around the supermarket, have a look, because I do. I'm now sort of become obsessed with this. Bread. Do you know what bread should be? It should be flour, water, and yeast, maybe a bit of salt.
Yes.
I made butter this week. I've never done anything like this in my life. Do you know what butter is? Do you know how you make butter? It's the easiest thing in the world. I know. Brian, how old are you?
Oh, look, I'm proud to say I'm in my early 60s these days.
Good. Well, I'm ahead of you a little bit, but do you know what? I'm the same as you, and I don't know how you make butter. Do you know how to make butter? You churn cream. You churn it and churn. It's the simple. Eventually, it just turns into butter. You empty out the buttermilk and do it in cold water. It's brilliant. So I made butter this week. You look at butter in the supermarket, it's got rapeseed oil in it to help make it spreadable. You look at bread, it's got rapeseed on it, palm oil in it, canola, it's the same thing as rapeseed. They have taken away the dairy product and replaced it. Chocolate has become, it's full of seed oils. So there's an opportunity in all this, because where is this? Let me start with this. Where's all this come from? How do we suddenly know this? Well, it wasn't the NHS texting me, was it? It wasn't governments doing documentaries on it. There wasn't the BBC doing this impactful journalistic analysis of what's happening. No. It was TikTok, wasn't it? That's the truth. And we've now got social media. I'm picking on TikTok, but social media has taught us, in terms of health, the NHS, who take maybe a third of everything I've ever earned, have never written to me and said, you know what, you should do this, eat more of this. Never, not once. They've never said anything. Yeah. If I go to my doctor and say, look, I've got this pain in my leg and I don't know, which I did this week. But he's not going to say, well, do you know, you should look at your diet, because he's not going to give me any advice. He doesn't know anything about me. He pulls up the file. He's got 3 things written down there, isn't it? About an operation I had 6 years ago. He's got nothing on me at all.
Yeah.
Social media knows exactly what's happening. AI, get into that world, will know exactly what I've eaten, where I'm buying food, what I'm doing. The 100%. Advice coming down the line is forensic, and it changes everything. So here's the good news, because it's bubbling underneath, it's bubbling up. We can feel it. I test it. I talk to people in the pub, talk to people out and about. No, well, yeah, I have heard about these seed oils. Yeah, I don't know what to do about it. No, it's bubbling up. The great opportunity is for one of the supermarkets. You have a different situation there, but we have sort of 4 biggies. To become a champion of that and to offer us. But at first, it'll be just an aisle that's seed oil free, and it will expand and grow. And Marks and Spencer's over here are prime for that. They're full of seed oils at the moment. They're starting to introduce products right now. Don't know why I'm promoting them, but starting to introduce products which are simpler, and the ingredients are on the front, not on the back, not small ingredients. They don't know yet. They don't know, but they could be the big champions and inherit that market, because the chances are, when I get my arm, I wave my arm in there, I go, what's the chance that we're going to become more aware of all this? Are we getting more hypochondriacal? Can I say the word? What's the chances, or less? Are we going to go, oh no, do you know what? I'll just go with the flow. No. We're going to become more and more aware, and that opportunity for that champion to take us into the future with food is enormous.
And so, you know, how fascinating. And listening, I think to myself, as we start to wrap this particular session up, unfortunately, I think to myself, the conscientious objector, will we see the rise of the conscientious objector, not just in food, but against having every single piece of their life examined, analysed and available in all forms of data? Will there be a conscientious rise for rampant consumerism, you know, that influences us? How will society respond to these trends is probably the bigger question. Or as big a question.
It's a great question to end on, Brian. This is well,
it's your conclusion.
It's just a tiny little question, isn't it? I would say to that tiny little question, I think dare I mention COVID, but post-COVID, we are more cynical. We've woken up to the fact that maybe some of big pharma, big food, big agro, big journalism, big media may not always have our best interests at heart. So yes, the rise of the contrarians is, hey, there's a podcast.
Well, Howard, delightful session. And I am reminded a little bit about that series 7 Up. Do you remember 7 Up when they interviewed these children of 7 and 14 and 21 and so forth?
Started about sort of my age or our age.
Well, that's right. They took them through to relative to our ages. And they'd come back and they'd say, look, effectively, did what you have to say and your views and what had influenced you? Well, I'm delighted to say, Howard, your views have progressed. They still remain cautiously optimistic and fascinating. And of course, insightful. Enjoy our video, and we'll get a copy of this. And want to thank everyone who's listened in to our podcast, The Future of Retail. Again, stay tuned. We've got more coming. Fascinating session. Howard, thank you on behalf of Retail Doctor Group, our communities, and thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Speak to you in 4 years' time.
No, I'll make sure it's well before that.